Okay, we're going to keep kicking around some good sales insights with Mike Boyle here, and what we want to look at is something that I think a lot of people have heard, the buzzword in sales, which is all about spin selling, which was originally developed in the 60s by Neil Rackerman, and we hear a lot of it talked about, but how would you see it applied effectively by advisors out in the marketplace to really make spin as a process around selling work for them?
Yeah. The spin, as you know, James, I grew up with spin. When I entered Xerox, because it was developed there, so you just got inducted into it. It was the world of spin. It was a 4-week living course. It was amazing. Probably the hardest thing I've ever done. Because let's be really clear, spin's just a technique. It's like lots of other techniques, and there's hundreds of sales techniques. Ironically, a lot of these have come out of the school of Rackerman, and before that out of Patterson at NCR. So we can see the origins of where all this training's come from. For advisors, I think advisors, and I've said this at conferences and at facilitator days for Mindshop, is that advisors are no better place to perform spin because you're naturally in the problem-solving industry. When I sold copiers and software and boxes and stuff, you're selling a product. You had to force more the product. You use spin to enable needs to grow them quicker. When you're in true problem-solving as an advisor, you're using spin as just a part of your technique because you already should be in problem-solving mode. It's then about getting those problems to become more real to the customer, to becoming, to really finding some traction around them, but actually finding that pain. It's that, if you look at spin, situation, problem, implication, need, payoff, it's the implication bit that's the key. But to get to implication type questions and to develop them, you've actually got to really do problem solving first, really, really well. And that's where most people struggle. They do situational questions, all not too bad, mostly closed, by the way. They ask very few open questions because they lose control of open questions, and we don't like losing control as human beings. We struggle to get into the problem questions, but we ask a few of them, but it's really implication where the power of the technique is. So we implicate saying, what is the cost of this implementation of your strategy going forward, going wrong? What's the cost to you, Mr. Leader? What's the cost of you going to the boss's table and saying, I mucked this up? So that's where the real power of it. And I think if you can understand the technique, that it is a technique in a problem-solving orientation, then that's really important.
And I guess Mindshop people are perfectly suited for that because I guess the very nature of the Mindshop tool is very problem-solving orientated, very action-focused.
One-page plan, classic example.
Yeah, and I guess now we're how and force field and a few of those other, I think almost as a default, people are almost in a mode of moving through a spin selling process by using a lot of the
Well, as you know, with all the sales managers we're coaching, both in a virtual sense and just as a mentor, with all the sales training we do, and we train about 2,000 people a year, every one of them does a one-page plan because the philosophy behind one-page plan is now we're how, natural problem solving.
Yes.
So and we say to our salespeople, if you get stuck in a sales call, which happens, you get forced back onto product and features by the customer. If you get stuck, just pull back to the default. Now we're how? Where are we now? Where do you need to be with this rollout of this strategy in the future? How do you think we're going to get there? And again, I come back to the words of Stephen Covey: seek to understand, to therefore be understood. If you take an orientation of understanding and problem solving, and first, and then solution second, spin becomes an easy technique. Now, I think there's some killer tips for spin. Again, if you do 4 weeks live-in training, you get all this stuff. But for me, there's a couple of key things. Orientation's first thing. So problem solving first, solution second. Don't get them the wrong way around, because it's very easy to walk in and say, you want to buy a watch and I've got something to offer, here's my product, because we're passionate about it. The second thing is get into conversational flow. And by that I mean, ask a question of a customer, wait and listen actively for the response, use the response as it comes back to you to create the next question. That's when spin becomes a flow mechanism and it works really well. If you start to preconceive and pre-build questions, not based on the conversation you're in, then you're in massive trouble. The other thing is framework and start. And in the toolbox, we've got a lovely model, which is one of the favourite one I love using, which is called PPP, Purpose, Process, Payoff. If you're going to do spin, problem-solving type sales calls with customers as advisors, get your framework right, because you've got to create an environment where the customer will relax and have questions thrown at them strongly. If they stop relaxing, then they're going to push back and force you to product and features. The last thing is you've just got to have a clear, what I call a runway in our training. Create a structure of runway lights, of markings, so a customer knows where this conversation's going. If they can't see the end game, they'll disengage.
Yep.
So that, you know, again, Mindshop people are perfectly suited for this. Advisors are perfectly suited for this. You know, as product sales people, we're not. We had to learn how to do it really well.
Yeah.
You guys, it's just, these people on Mindshop just in the right mould.
Yep, fantastic. Thanks for that, Mike. I think you put it beautifully and certainly backs up our points around Mindshop people should be selling outcomes, not products, and very much customising their approach. And I think Spin's a big help on that. So thanks for your insight again, Mike.